The light of the moon and stars illuminated a large castle in the middle of the forest, surrounded by trees, its bluish roof blending with the night sky. The castle belonged to the emir family of the Osirian Empire, at some point in the near future, in that very same castle. In a large and luxurious hall with a golden chandelier at its center, several people seemed to be enjoying an event. However, they were interrupted by the loud sound of a cane hitting the floor, drawing everyone's attention. Then the entrance of the Prince of the Osirian Empire was announced, the one who is second in line to the throne. Thus, a young man crossed the curtains, carrying a serene smile with him. His name was Prince Kyle Amur. As he walked, the nobles bowed, all of them showing their respect to the young man. The prince suddenly turned, stretching his hand to someone behind the curtain. A thought emerged in the mind of the person behind the curtain. The idea that she would have never imagined all this. That in the end, in front of all these nobles, she would be the only one standing beside this man. A pale hand slowly and timidly appeared through the curtain. The prince then grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her close to him, thus revealing a girl with long red hair and a beautiful dress. Her face showed surprise at the sudden movement, while the prince merely smiled at her. The girl thought that some time ago she would never have expected this, that none of what happened was ever part of her plan. The scene focused only on the two of them. He is on the left, firm and confident, showing the grandeur expected from someone of the royal family. She is on the right, reserved and with closed eyes, yet exuding stunning beauty. In the background, various voices began to rise again among the crowd of nobles, questioning whether that girl was truly who they thought she was. A young woman named Tara Elias. They were apparently very surprised by her appearance, seeing how dazzling she looked and how much she had changed. Tara then became visibly irritated and told the prince that if those people were going to talk about her, they could at least be a bit more discreet, since she heard everything they said. Kyle glanced at her and commented on her expression, asking if she couldn't smile more, since her face looked like she was on the verge of fighting some noble, when in fact, she should behave as the prince's companion. She quickly turned and forced a smile on her face, her stiff smile far from pleasant, looking as if she was about to kill someone in the next few seconds. She asked if it was good enough, and demanded that he fulfill his part of the deal. The prince looked sideways at her and smiled ironically. Meanwhile, she thought that it should never have been like this. Not with this man. Far from all the commotion of the party. In the present, in a relatively tidy room, someone twisted on the bed, grumbling while thinking out loud. The person said that all this was very frustrating, grabbing the pillow while saying that she should have never let the author write a story like this, mocking the name of the work, Chronicles of Okaria. We then see the person who said all that. Sitting on the bed was a girl with long red hair, but quite overweight, different from the girl we saw in the future moments ago. She continued rambling, stating that anyone would wish to reincarnate as a beautiful and powerful princess, empress, or even as a villainess. Throwing herself back on the bed, she questioned, in the end, why among all those options she woke up in the body of an obese girl. The girl got irritated and punched the bed. She then remembered the fate of that character in the story, born into a doomed house and destined for eternal disdain. She couldn't help but worry. After all, in the book, the character she reincarnated as ended up executed by guillotine. She screamed mentally, unable to stand it anymore, her hands holding her head as she couldn't think of what to do. While she despaired, someone knocked on the door. A maid entered and asked if she was still sleeping. The woman then pulled the curtains and said she had to hurry. A long, awkward silence followed while the girl still had her hands on her head and her mouth wide open. The maid scolded the girl, saying she should get ready and couldn't stay lazing around in bed all day. Tara, still embarrassed by the previous situation, asked why not, since she was tired and didn't want to go out now. The maid quickly fixed the sheets and warned that everyone had been summoned to the meeting room. The young woman lets out an ironic laugh, asking what that had to do with her, stating that they hadn't even really called her. Somewhat awkwardly, the maid says that the count had ordered her presence. She stands up startled and even stammers from so much surprise. Letting the maid arrange everything, she gets lost in her thoughts. The girl she had reincarnated into was named Tara Elias. She was 18 years old and always ended up stammering when she was nervous. She realized that all of this was very strange and unfamiliar. Her new body, her stammering, and even the status of a noble's daughter. Everything was different. Before reincarnating into Tara, she used to be a 33-year-old woman living in Seoul, South Korea. She used to work as a screenwriter, and in the end, ended up murdered while dining after a workday. When she realized it, she had woken up in this new life. Meanwhile, the maid was helping her into a blue dress. She looked at herself in the mirror, watching the maid fix her hair and observing her new body as she waited. It's been 3 months since she woke up in this body. She had managed to drop from 102 kilos to 92 in that time, but it still didn't seem enough. With the maid's help, she left the room and began to descend the stairs. Tara Elias, the girl whose body she was now in, hardly ever left the room in the book. She wondered if this was how reincarnation worked, her memories and those of this body merging into a single consciousness, gradually changing her habits. She then reached a door where a butler was waiting for her. The butler bowed to her and the doors opened. She was nervous, realizing that even before or after reincarnating, she had never been summoned like this. Upon entering the room, she saw a large table with some people already waiting. She swallowed hard, realizing she had never attended such an official meeting before. Two people sitting then spoke to her, a man and a girl. Both laughed at her. The young woman wondered why she was even there, and the man ridiculed her, ironically questioning if now she cared about the family name, since she had never attended any other meeting. The girl was actually Tara Elias, the youngest daughter of House Elias, 17 years old, while the other noble was Jason Elias, the second eldest son at 27 years old. Tara only remembered him as a hyena who constantly sought the position of firstborn of House Elias after his death, which had happened 7 years ago. She then observed the other people sitting. First, an older woman, Chloe Elias, the third child, the most intelligent of House Elias's children, and a businesswoman. As she reached the table, a butler helped Tara adjust her chair. She looked at the last person seated, a young man with brown hair and a serious look. His name was Logan Elias, 23 years old, studying at a military academy. That was the only thing she remembered about him. She whispered to herself that it was only the second time she had seen him. He turned his gaze aside with disinterest. She grew nervous, realizing he had caught her staring at him. Still whispering, she wondered when the count would arrive. She turned her head in surprise upon hearing the noise of everyone standing up at once. Seeing that, she clumsily stood up. At the entrance door, an old man with a cane appeared. He looked ahead with seriousness. His name was Lloyd Elias, 57 years old, Count and head of House Elias, the fifth most powerful in the entire empire. He cast a cold look at Tara, who nervously looked away. After all, in this new life, he was also her father. The man sat down and a butler adjusted his chair. He asked if everyone was aware of the notice sent to each house by the palace. Tara was confused and surprised. Meanwhile, all the others answered yes, together like a choir, still complimenting it by calling him Your Excellency to show their respect. The Count explained that the Empire said they were merely looking for new administrative bureaucrats, but he stated that everyone must have realized this was just an excuse to search for the house that could provide a new heir to the throne. Tara clenched her hands nervously. She swallowed hard and thought that the part of the story where House Elias would decline and be destroyed was starting. The Count continued speaking, saying that his family was very close to the imperial house, having contributed greatly to the empire's rise. He then got lost in memories as he said that House Elias might have lost part of its shine, and wondered if it could have been different if that child hadn't left this world. Tara looks at him with her head down, trying to remember who this child he was referring to was, but she doesn't come to an answer. He continues, stating that his house had never produced a consul for the prince, the next heir, but that was going to change. The Count slammed his fist hard on the table. After that, he shouted that he believed they now had a chance. After all, the eldest son of House McQueen already held the position of second scribe, and the second son of House Baroda was an assistant to Princess Margaret, the third in line for the succession. He said he didn't understand how they were the only great house that still had no one in the imperial palace, outraged at those who said that House Elias looked more like a merchant house than a noble one, the greatest shame of his life. Then he declared that whoever from House Elias managed to pass the test to earn the honor of being the first scribe of the empire would receive his title, and along with it one of his lands, Pantheon, in the western region of the empire. All his children were shocked, Tara almost cursing mentally. A butler interrupted, announcing that lunch was served, and the meeting would continue after the meal, asking everyone to proceed to the dining room. Everyone kept talking among themselves, still processing the information. Tara left the room with a worried look. Already in her room, she wrote in a notebook while half the food still sat on the plate. She thought out loud that the prize her father, the Count, was offering was about 1/3 of House Elias's wealth, the fifth strongest in the empire. Moreover, the location of Pantheon land was very privileged, close to the Duchy of Khan, a place with access to luxury goods, which would give whoever governed Pantheon a monopoly on their sales. Biting the pen and thoughtful, she realized that this was basically everything she needed to be the next heir of House Elias, and it would be foolish not to participate. Meanwhile, her maid arrived, asking if she was going to join the lunch. Tara said that she wasn't really hungry, just wanting to eat some snacks. The maid, seeing the pile of cakes and sweets, was astonished that she considered that only some. Already gathering the pile of plates, the maid asked why she had called her, thinking the girl only wanted her to bring more snacks. Tara then asked her to notify her when lunch in the dining room was finished, and the maid agreed. Alone again, Tara said that the Elias lineage was the problem. No matter what, she had to prevent them from entering the royal court. Eating a sandwich, she realized that none of them seemed willing to let such a tempting opportunity slip by, not knowing what to do in the end. Meanwhile, in the dining room, Jason then questioned his father if they would abandon their commercial agreements. The Count retorted, saying that whoever passed the scribe test must also have the ability to oversee all the deals they already conducted commercially, without needing to abandon anything. Tara thought that Jason, despite everything, wasn't the sharpest knife. That is, a bit of an idiot, always prioritizing his connections for when he would try his ascent as the new leader of House Elias. Logan raised his hand and addressed his father. He asked if he could accelerate his graduation, thus being able to focus on the test. The Count agreed and said he would talk to the headmaster to have him graduate next month. Tara thought that she really couldn't read what he was thinking since he was so expressionless. After that, Chloe also raised her hand to speak. She asked how long it would take for the palace to delegate the scribe position. He stated that it would be around 2 to 3 years, counting on the current king to abdicate the throne within that period. Meanwhile, in her room, Tara, who was writing in her notebook her opinions of her siblings, froze. She had written that Chloe was a great candidate and that Logan seemed brainless. Tara suddenly realized that this matched what was in the book, that in 3 years the king would abdicate the throne, and she had only that time to change the terrible future of House Elias. Her heart began to race with that thought, until someone knocked on the door. The person said that lunch was over and that she could come down. She swallowed hard and stood up determined, realizing exactly which part of the book she was now in. She began descending the stairs, step by step with the help of the maid. Arya came closer and the maid, noticing, whispered that she would leave them alone. Arya hurried down, holding her dress as her heels made noise. Tara, surprised, tried to step aside. Arya laughed and told her to get out of the way while purposefully bumping into her. Off balance, Tara nearly fell but managed to grab the staircase just in time. Startled, she asked if that was on purpose. Arya, with a fake smile on her face, claimed she hadn't noticed it was her and asked her sister to forgive her. Leaning on the staircase, Tara wondered if she should believe that flimsy excuse. Arya, indifferent, walked away as if nothing had happened. Extremely irritated, Tara thought about how she could punish Arya for that. Already in the meeting room, the Count asked if anyone else had any questions. Arya forced a cute expression and asked if she wasn't too young to take the test. Her father, moved, said she didn't need to worry about that, affirming that they weren't just looking for new bureaucrats like the scribe test, but also for potential partners for the new king, and therefore she should participate. Arya kept playing innocent for her father and said she would do whatever he thought was best. Meanwhile, Tara remembered what she wrote in her notebook, describing Arya as a two-faced brat, very fake in front of their father. Seeing her father stand to leave, Tara was surprised. Realizing she couldn't just stay still and wait for the fate written in the book to happen, even nervous, Tara raised her hand and asked if they were allowed to choose their own tutors to prepare for the test. Her father turned with a disdainful look, asking if she was really going to participate. She grabbed her dress, trying to contain her anxiety. Tara, although stammering a little mid-sentence, said that he had said everyone in the Elias family could participate. The Count brought his hand to his chin, thoughtful. He said he really had said that, but when he was about to give a reason why she shouldn't participate, Tara interrupted him. She asked for an equal chance and stated that she was also an Elias. Her siblings then started whispering among themselves, mocking her appearance and behavior, but her father ordered everyone to be silent. Silence then returned to the table. With everyone focused on him, the Count spoke again, asking what Tara would do if she were in his place as leader of the house. With sweat dripping down her face, Tara addressed her father and said that if she were him, she would see no choice but to approve her decision to participate. He asked her why he should do that. Tara said because he should be equal among all his children. Her father put his hand to his forehead, irritated, concluding that even if he should, she had never done anything for the Elias name. Giving her the same chance would basically be a slap in the face to the others. She tried to convince him by saying that House Elias only prospered due to trust among its members. They then stared at each other in silence while the Count's other children whispered among themselves. Surprised by her behavior, trying to understand where she learned to speak like that, confronting her own father. Thinking and irritated, Lloyd Elias asked everyone to be silent again. He asked if she was really talking about trust. Tara took a deep breath and brought her hand to her chest, saying that trust walks side by side with power, and as leader of his house, he should always respect what he himself says. Lifting her gaze, she promised not to disappoint him and asked for the chance to prove it. The Count stood up. He asked if it really had been 3 months. She was surprised but confirmed that, yes, it had been 3 months since she woke up. The Count moved toward the door. Meanwhile, he affirmed that since she spoke the truth and preached trust, she must have the capacity to bear the burden that comes with it. He turned to the side, demanding that the butler bring him his cane. The Count continued, saying that for today the conversation was over, also informing them to go speak to the butler about the tutors they would choose. Everyone agreed and the Count left the dining room. Chloe was seen getting up and whispering in the background. Sometime later, still in the Elias mansion, Tara wiped the sweat from her forehead with her arm. She said aloud that she was very nervous but thankful her argument had worked. She held an axe with both hands. Her thoughts returned to that meeting. She couldn't help but think she had spoken more than she should have. Pulling the axe back, she thinks there's nothing she can do, that she can't change the past. While she's doing that, a voice in the background says that's not how you use an axe, referring to her as Lady. She glances sideways, still holding the axe up. A muscular, dark-skinned man appears, wondering out loud how many times he'll have to teach her how to hold an axe properly. He grabs his own axe and makes a quick forward movement, correcting her, showing that she should hold it farther down the handle to get more momentum. Tara says she already knew that, but the axe gets much heavier that way. She starts trembling from the weight. While she's concentrating, the man warns that she'll hurt herself like that. She turns to him, irritated, telling him to shut up because he's giving her a headache. Without realizing it, she starts to lose her balance, falling on her ass right after. She turns her face away in embarrassment toward the man, who looks back at her with disdain and pity. Still on the ground and breathless, she complains again about the body, that out of all the characters she could reincarnate as, it had to be Tara. The instructor yells at her, ordering her to stop whining and run 5 laps around the yard. She gets up and starts running while the man watches. Panting, she feels happy that at least her father allowed her to have a tutor. Since she needs to change her future and escape the guillotine in the next 3 years, she needs to stay focused to survive. And she would also need all the help and connections she could get. Tara turns, smiling, and thinks it's a good thing she has Bernard on her side and that everything is going according to her plan. Bernard, the instructor, then looks at her with doubt, thinking she's finally lost her mind. 2 months earlier, Bernard asked Tara what she meant. She confirms that it's exactly what he heard. She wanted him to be her knight and teach her the military arts of the army. Bernard finds it strange, asking why it has to be him. She can't think of a good excuse, saying he wouldn't have to do much, just train her daily. In fact, in her mind, Tara knew Bernard would one day become a general, and it would be foolish not to take the chance to get close to him. Every bit of help she could get would make a difference. Bernard puts his hand on his face, still confused, not understanding why she would want to be trained like an ordinary soldier. A bit nervous, she replies that he would be rewarded and has nothing to lose, reinforcing that she just wants normal military training. He refuses, telling her to find someone else because his duty is only to serve on the battlefield. After asking him to reconsider and being rejected, Tara tries to bribe the soldier. Bernard turns to her again, and she tosses a sack at him. He opens the sack with his mouth since his other hand is occupied holding an axe. Inside the sack, there appears to be some white powder. Tara says he failed to attend his feudal obligations 2 months ago. That catches the man's interest. She then says the powder is good for headaches, stomach aches, and things like that, saying he suffers from chronic constipation and diarrhea, saying that his intestines failed him and that's terrible for a knight. Even though he's visibly embarrassed, she doesn't notice and keeps talking, even saying she heard someone calling him 10 times a day for going to the bathroom so often. Bernard cries from the shame and asks if she's done talking, saying that even for her, that crossed the line. Tara snaps back, saying he could never afford the medicine on a knight's salary, and she says someone named Sir Oliver, probably the family doctor, said that after a year of taking the medicine, all the problems would be gone. He then closes the sack with the medicine again. With a red face, he says he needs time to think about it. Tara turns her back and says he can refuse if he wants. There are plenty of other knights she could ask. He quickly shifts his gaze between her and the medicine, anxious, and yells that he agrees before she can get too far. Tara then puts a terrifying smile on her face. Everything had gone according to her plan so far. She turns to Bernard with a genuine smile and tells him she'll provide the medicine and monetary compensation for the training. Back to the present. Tara is completely filthy from her training. However, she can't stop laughing, claiming she knows the whole future story. Although, according to her memory, the story was short and canceled after 60 episodes. But she wanted to convince herself that everything was fine. Looking from inside the palace at Tara kneeling in the courtyard and laughing madly was her father, the Count. He was speaking with a butler. The butler said he heard that Tara was obsessed with writing and had improved a lot in the past 3 months. The Count said he knew she had improved, he just didn't expect her to become so smart. The butler then said that according to Oliver, apparently her doctor, she showed no after effects and her stuttering had greatly improved, although her physical form hadn't changed much. Lloyd said that this was a great dilemma, wondering who introduced her to the knight. The other man replied that she had sought him out on her own, and then gave the knight's background. His name was Bernard. He was 23 years old. His weapon of choice was an axe. He had become a knight a year ago and had recently acquired the status of sword runner. The count was shocked, wondering why a knight would decide to teach a mere noblewoman to fight. The butler agreed in disbelief, also not knowing the reason. From the courtyard, they heard Tara shouting and continuing to laugh madly while her father turned his face toward her with a serious look, asking the servant to keep an eye on her. Already in her room, Tara was almost blue from hunger, a result of skipping dinner and having trained early in the morning. She could hardly believe she had lost 2 kilos since she started training. Almost on impulse, she grabbed a cookie that was on the table and brought it close to eating it, dropping it when it neared her mouth and startling herself. Apparently, someone had left a plate of cookies in her room. A nightmare for someone trying to lose weight. She screamed the name of her maid. Beth came running and opened the door, asking what had happened. She found Tara trembling and backing away from the table with the cookies. While stammering, Tara said she had never ordered that tray of cookies. Beth replied nervously, saying it was the plate of snacks that the servants brought every day to all the nobles of the house. Without taking her eyes off the cookies, Tara held herself back, not wanting to waste all the hard work she had done training that morning by falling into temptation. She turned her face away to not look at the cookies while affirming that she never wanted to see those delicious chocolate wonders in her room again. Only water was allowed in there now. Beth listened quietly, with a slightly sad expression, agreeing and turning to leave the room with slumped shoulders. Tara then realized her mistake, apologizing for being a bit rude and for shouting earlier. Beth turned back, confused. Tara continued, explaining that she shouldn't be so hard on her, especially when Beth was her personal maid and was just doing what she was told. Beth said she didn't need to apologize, not mentioning that she actually wasn't her personal maid. Tara didn't understand, freezing in place. Beth then explained that since she had been unconscious for so long, they decided she didn't need a personal maid, and now she was following the Countess's orders by taking care of her sometimes. Tara thought out loud that since Beth came here so often, it gave her the wrong impression. Beth said she came often because Tara called her frequently, leaving Tara stunned, as she had just shouted her name moments ago. Beth glanced at her from the corner of her eye, wondering if she had said everything she wanted to. When Beth turned to leave again, Tara asked if she would accept being her personal maid. Beth then got anxious and turned abruptly, saying her services were for Tara to command and not something she should accept or refuse. Tara said she couldn't force her to do something she didn't want to. The maid blushed. She had never had the opportunity to choose anything before. Tara immediately searched for her shawl in the wardrobe while saying it was simple. Either she wanted to or not. Beth blushed and swallowed hard, and then said she would love to. She then ran off, saying that the shawl had lost a button, so she had taken it to the seamstress and was going to pick it up now. Tara then sighed. Later, in a meeting with other nobles, Victoria Elias, a countess of the House of Elias and mother of Jason and Chloe, asked what Tara was asking her for. The other nobles in the room remained silent. Tara then thinks that it is not the best moment to discuss internal matters of the house, not with so many strangers around. The countess stands up and asks what the hell she was thinking, entering here and making a demand like that. Tara is surprised and apologizes while stammering. The countess continues, saying it's impossible that she believes her time is more valuable than hers, calling her a peasant in the end, trying to belittle her. Another woman stands up, nervously holding her dress. The woman, also with red hair like Tara, sincerely apologizes while trembling and looking down, saying that her daughter had just woken up recently and still had much to learn about the house's manners. This woman was Tara Elias, 36 years old, the only Elias on Tara's side and the third wife of Count Lloyd. She tries to lead Tara to the exit, telling her to look for her when she has more free time. Biting her lip in anger, Tara thinks that although she had always been mistreated by the Countess, it had never gone this far, but apparently she would have to wait. She gives a noble salute and apologizes, stating that she will request a proper audience next time. As she and her mother leave, Victoria continues to mock them, saying they had no manners. Tara's mother begins trembling with indignation, still holding her daughter's arm. Tara whispers that she probably has more to lose than gain if she keeps talking. However, seeing her mother in that situation was the last straw. She turns back to the Countess and begins to speak, stating that Jason and Chloe had 4 each, Arya 3, and Logan 2. The Countess stops drinking her tea, wondering what she was talking about. Tara continues, saying that she had none. Irritated for not knowing what she was referring to, the Countess slams her teacup onto the saucer and yells at her. One of the nobles in the room turns and asks Tara what she didn't have any of. She states she was talking about personal maids. The nobles in the room were shocked. After all, how could a daughter of the 5th largest house in the empire not have a single maid? It seemed very far from reality. Embarrassed, the Countess says she has no idea what she's talking about. Seeing that she was turning red, Tara takes advantage to blackmail her, using the nobles in her favor. Tara says she understands that she didn't know about it. that she was probably busy dealing with the agricultural products issue and that she should have already requested someone be assigned to her. Victoria plays along with the lie, saying that was exactly what had happened. She had been so busy and buried in overdue paperwork that she couldn't pay attention to small details. Tara continues, saying that the countess was really very busy firing incompetent maids and hiring new ones, and that she came here only because she had her eye on a particular maid and wanted her to be assigned to her. The countess agrees and says she had already asked the housekeeper to choose one for her, but she had been stalling. In the end, approving that Tara could have Beth as her personal maid. Already after leaving the room, Isabel asks her daughter how she knew that Lady Victoria had changed the agricultural supplies. She simply says she asked the advisor where to look for the right information. After all, it wasn't a secret, especially for those with Elias lineage. Tara's mother is surprised, realizing that she had really thought through everything for that conversation. Tara turns and asks if she was also thinking of investing in the wine trade. She remembers a conversation she overheard behind a door, that the prohibition on Sorbonne wine would be lifted, with its price rising and possibly returning up to 20 times the initial investment. Her mother then puts her hand on her chin, thoughtful. She says that all the noblewomen are thinking of investing in it, and she thinks she will do the same. Tara crosses her arms and says she understands that noblewomen have some freedom to invest, but that they lack important information. Thus, they should wait a little longer and then decide what to do. Her mother looks at her with a proud look, realizing that although she had changed a lot over the years, she was still her daughter Tara, launching the old typical parent phrase, saying she grew up so fast. Tara gets a little nervous, laughing loudly and saying that she certainly grew up, maybe even too much, finishing by saying that her mother should seek her out before investing. She runs towards a carriage. Her mother asks where she's going in such a hurry. She turns with a smile on her face and says she's going to convince someone to do something, being very vague. Isabel is left completely confused, watching her daughter leave like that, already in the big city. Bernard asks what exactly is their destination. Tara points to a building in the distance, leaving Bernard extremely surprised. He asks if she has lost her mind. She says she is completely sane and ironically thanks him for his concern. After some time walking, Bernard starts complaining, saying it's really pathetic how knights are bravely fighting on the battlefield and he's here playing babysitter, wondering if he should quit everything and try the test for the palace gate guard. Although it doesn't pay well, it would be a more honorable job. Tara then asks how much longer until the entrance. He replies about 20 minutes, thinking afterward that the gatekeeper's test was only in 3 months, weighing his life choices. Tara suddenly stops, irritated, asking what he's talking about. He is confused as to why she stopped. Tara snaps back, saying that even though he has the strength to lift a whole cow, he still can't be smarter than half of one. He visibly gets irritated, saying he was only saying those things because she asked. And besides, they had agreed on training, not on him escorting her everywhere she went. Tara agrees that she only asked him to train her, not to swear loyalty to her or anything like that, but she expected he could serve as her bodyguard from time to time. Bernard mocks her after all. Swearing loyalty is something a knight only does once in life, and he didn't intend to do that for her. A bit annoyed, she says it didn't have to be an oath necessarily. Then she firms her voice and says he has until next month to decide if he will truly serve her as a knight or not, and if he decides to give up on her, she will send him a good amount of the medicine as compensation. He puts a big smile on his face and says there's no turning back from what she said, agreeing. Bernard then states they should move on quickly, and that during this mission she will have the best guard at her side. A short time later, already at the door of the place, he asks if this isn't too much, doubting any noblewoman would dare cross such a dangerous place. Annoyed, Tara says that even if temporary, he is still her knight now and should have a little more respect. Cleaning his ear, Bernard asks if she knows why Lacton's Road is so feared, complimenting that it's because the entire Imperial Guard is useless at preventing what happens here, whether it's kidnapping or murder. Tara says she already knew that. By saying that, she only managed to irritate him more. Bernard yells at her. After all, she's heading to a place where people don't care about prohibitions or morals, doing whatever they want, and she seemed way too calm. She covers her ears from the noise and asks him to stop yelling. She tries to move forward but is pulled back by the hood of her clothes by her knight. He questions what Tara is thinking since it seems like she has no fear of what's coming. With a smile on her face, she says it's obvious she's afraid, but she has him, her great knight, Bernard Smith. Tara continues, stating that this is a matter of life and death, and that they really need to go, asking him to keep walking. Bernard can't help but hesitate, but ends up giving in, asking her to lower her voice and walk close to him. She stays behind him so they can move with less chance of being noticed. However, as they start walking, Tara bumps into Bernard's back as he hasn't moved an inch. She gets irritated and asks what's wrong, if there's a problem. Bernard asks her to hide behind a rock and not come out because he had taken his medicine a few hours late before leaving home earlier. He quickly runs to the side, leaving Tara not knowing what to do, wondering if it was number 2. She sits on the ground next to Bernard's axe. Then she hears some noise behind the wall, sounding like people fighting. Curious, she raises her head above to peek. She sees 3 bandits kicking a man lying on the ground. Tara notes that the man is quite muscular and wonders why he doesn't fight back, thinking maybe he's strong but cowardly. The wall she was leaning on starts to crack under her weight. Diet and training really do take time to show results. It collapses and Tara falls forward, being seen by the 3 men who were beating the man on the ground. She curses in pain and tries to support herself, but when she looks up, she realizes everyone is staring at her. Tara's heartbeat increases. She gets scared and freezes in place. One of them mocks her, asking what the hell a boar was doing there, clearly referring to her weight. The other 2 join in. One laughs about her breaking the wall, and the other says a pig was trying to escape as she turned to leave. Limping, she says she's not a pig, claiming the wall was poorly built. The men then tell her to come back because even if she's a girl or even a pig, they won't let her go so easily. Tara stops and whispers to herself that it's been about 10 minutes since Bernard left. She turns to the bandits, covering her face with the hood. Tara apologizes for disturbing them and says they can go back to doing what they were doing and that she will just go her way. The bandits get indignant at her trying to give them orders, demanding payment for the interruption. She turns her face away and covers her nose while extending a gold coin to them. The brown-haired bandit gets excited, saying that the little pig they found was also rich, but he wasn't interested in a single coin. He wanted the pouch on her waist that had more than double that. Tara assures him she's paying for the time she took from them, and that's exactly what that time was worth, nothing more. The thieves get irritated. They soon say that she can't defend herself against them and should hand over everything she has. She swallows hard and says that actually she can defend herself. They laugh, wondering how. She quickly crouches and says it's like this, then screams Bernard's name as loudly as she can. In the distance, Bernard, with an enraged face, runs toward them like a moving train on a collision course. He grabs his axe that was leaning against the wall and charges straight at them. Tara turns her back to the chaos, only hearing the sounds of impacts and punches. She confirms that Bernard truly has a force to be reckoned with. 5 minutes later, it was all over. Tara was clapping her hands and congratulating him, bragging about having such a strong night. Still angry, Bernard yells at her, saying he had been very clear in telling her to just sit and wait by the wall and that the worst could have happened if he had been a second later. Tara, embarrassed and tapping her fingertips together, argues that she was just peeking and couldn't have known the wall would just break out of nowhere. She makes a calming gesture and says that since he arrived in time, everything's fine. They just need to move on. Stressed to his limit, he covers his eyes and mutters that he doesn't know if she's someone fearless or just empty-headed, because if she ended up being kidnapped, the worst could happen. She tries to explain that she knew his diarrhea usually lasted about 15 minutes and she was counting on that time to stall the thieves. Bernard sighed, realizing there's no arguing with someone like her. He turns around and she notices they had ignored the guy lying on the ground, the same one who was being beaten earlier. Tara kneels to get closer and apologizes for trying to run earlier, explaining that there wasn't much she could have done alone, laughing awkwardly. The man remains still and quiet on the ground. She continues, saying that if he needs money for treatment of his wounds, she can help. Seeing he had no reaction, she looks at Bernard restlessly. Standing up and dusting off her clothes, Tara walks to Bernard and asks him to give this to the man, leaving a gold coin in his hand. The man on the ground laughs, making Bernard and Tara look in his direction. He quickly stands up, leaving Tara shocked, thinking he was completely fine. The face beneath the hood is revealed, a smiling young man with brown hair. While smiling, he asks what she would do if not even 100 gold pieces were enough to pay. Tara is speechless while Bernard curses, calling him a bastard and saying they had just saved his life and didn't even get a thank you. Tara asks Bernard to just leave him be and go. Bernard still wanted to argue with the young man, but Tara holds and pulls his arm. He doesn't understand at first, but on Tara's face there's a look of fear and she repeats that they should go. Even reluctantly, he agrees and they move away from the hooded young man. The young man watches them leave and laughs at the situation, finding it funny that she had offered a gold coin. A little later, while they were walking, Bernard asks why they left like that. It didn't even seem like something she would do, and she seemed more scared than usual. While dusting off her cloak, Tara says it's more instinct than fear. She points out that he had no smell at all, which was unusual for someone wearing such tattered clothes and looking like a beggar, meaning there was something strange about his story. Bernard ignores that and asks if she sniffed him. She says that's not the point. He didn't sound at all like a commoner, especially when he spoke. His tone was that of a rich man. Even so, he doesn't get it, questioning that he just looked like a weakling getting beaten up by guys half his size, and that he could have offered money if that were the case. Tara clicks her tongue, saying it wasn't just about money. He seemed to have some kind of power or authority, so it was better to avoid any interaction. She also explains that she doesn't want any unnecessary conflict, so it's better to just forget about it and focus. Bernard stays silent and just cleans his ear. They enter a kind of bar and sit down. Tara becomes introspective, trying to figure out who that man was. She remembers her past life, having worked on a television program. Back then, she used to look for various scholars every week to participate in the show. Most of them were great specialists in their fields. Each of them had an imposing aura, making her realize they were way above her. She had noticed the same kind of aura in the man they saved earlier, only much more intense. She questions his identity, wondering if this incident was part of the original story. Then she realizes he is a variable she doesn't know, so it's better to avoid him to not cause a disaster. Bernard seems restless, and she asks what's wrong. Suddenly, a voice addresses her, saying how cute and adorable she looked, also asking what she wanted. Tara gets slightly annoyed, thinking someone is mocking her. She realizes a woman at the counter is talking to them. The woman says they make an interesting pair and ends by asking what Bernard would like, calling him a strong knight. Tara is surprised to see that instead of mocking her, the woman actually has more curves than she does. Bernard coughs to hide his embarrassment and says he just wants a beer. He turns a bit red, something Tara doesn't miss. She clears her throat and says she wants a kind of hot liquor with a very specific name. The bartender asks if she's sure about the order. Tara says that's exactly it, asking how long she'll have to wait. The woman finds it interesting and says about half an hour because they were low on stock. Meanwhile, she'll bring Bernard's beer. Going to the back of the shop, she says the knight will have to wait a few minutes until she returns because she has to take care of the young lady's order. As Bernard starts drinking, Tara comments that she's discovered his taste in women, even asking if he's always had a weakness for curvy women. Bernard is so surprised he spits out his drink. Trembling and embarrassed, he says that a lady like her shouldn't say things like that. Laughing, she says he knows she's not like the other nobles. Clearing his throat and composing himself, Bernard asks why she ordered such a strong liquor. Tara says she's never even tried something like that. After all, in reality, that drink she ordered doesn't even exist, leaving him very confused. In a nearby place, the hooded young man that Tara and Bernard had saved was talking to other people. One of them said there was no reason for him to get personally involved in something like that. It would be safer to let them handle it, referring to him as Majesty. The young man stops, calling by name the man who had just spoken, Nick Bright. Nick turns out to be one of the thieves who attacked the young man, meaning it was all a setup. Repeating the part where he called the young man by the title, asking if he heard it right, Nick realizes his mistake and kneels down, deeply begging for forgiveness. The young man says he never intervenes in something without a reason, and that calling him by his title in public will earn him 500 laps of punishment in the palace courtyard. Nick understands and uses the crates nearby to head in some direction. Meanwhile, the young man addresses the others present, saying that when the merchant ships dock at night, they will infiltrate, and after helping unload the wine, they will know its destination. Placing his hand thoughtfully on his chin, he says that the Lacton gang will probably be out of action for a while after tonight's operation, and that if it weren't for the girl with the gold coin, they could have dug a little deeper. He asks what information they have about the tavern she went to. The other man then answers, saying she has no connection to the gang they are investigating, although they have never attacked any regular customer of the tavern, which was strange. The young man points out that the person behind it is a clever fox who already knows about his presence but hasn't taken any action yet, wondering if they were trying to prove neutrality or something like that. The man asks if he should investigate the two who interrupted earlier, that is, Tara and Bernard. While remembering the scenes from earlier, the young man asks the man named Walter what he would do. Walter doesn't understand and asks him to explain. He asks Walter what he would do if he weren't a master swordsman and found himself in a fight he couldn't win. The man answers that he would have just turned around and run. The conversation continues, and when asked what he would do even if he had reinforcements, Walter still says he would run. After all, there's no way to predict how long it would take for help to arrive, and it's not worth risking his life. The young man laughs and says he's precisely right. However, a small piece of gold was enough to change that same situation earlier, when the girl needed to buy time. He finally asks Walter to find the list of investors now that they have a clearer view of the illegal wine distribution. The man agrees and quickly leaves, jumping over the crates just like Nick. The young man lowers his hood. At last, he thinks he can endure the humiliation of pretending to be a beggar if it's for a greater good, grateful for being ignored until now, claiming that the more insignificant he appears, the easier it will be to infiltrate. 5 minutes after all this, back at the tavern, the bartender announces that the girl's drink is ready, but warns that the sweet knight will have to keep her company, making Bernard blush. He stands up embarrassed and slams the table, saying it's not the time to joke like that, asking her to take him along for safety. Tara reassures him, saying this is important and asking him to trust her. Bernard replies, affirming that she's not like a lord who can rely on their title for protection. Tara says she knows that and promises to scream if anything happens, but that this is important and her future depends on it. He agrees, but with one condition. Bernard whispers something in her ear and lets her go. Already inside the other room, a blonde woman was waiting for Tara while sipping a cup of tea. She greets her, asking what a young lady of the Elias house desires at her establishment. Tara points out that she already knows the answer to that. The woman says she should know that she doesn't take just anyone as her apprentice. The woman's name was Andre Pitt, and she was the leader of the Black Society, the largest secret intelligence guild in all of Okarian. The drink Tara had ordered earlier was just the code for a meeting with her. Approaching the table, Tara states she is not just anyone, but before discussing anything, she asks if Andre will not turn over the hourglass that was on the table. Andre does so slowly and says that everyone who seeks her here wants something special, questioning what the daughter of the Elias house could desire to want to become her apprentice. Tara swallows hard and answers that she is the only one who can help make her dream come true. Andre taps the hourglass on the table, and with a smile on her face, she says that when Tara talks like that, it piques her curiosity, asking exactly what her dream is. Tara replies that it is to save her family from destruction. She becomes intrigued. After all, the Elias house was the 5th most powerful in the empire. How could they need saving? Questioning if Tara wanted her to help elevate her house to the 1st place in the hierarchy. Tara contradicts her, saying she doesn't plan to make it the greatest house, but just to prevent it from sinking completely. The time on the hourglass runs out, and Tara stands up, leaving Andre confused. Opening the door, Tara sees the bartender holding Bernard, trembling with effort trying to keep him from breaking down the door. Tara reassures him, saying that she is in good hands and asks him to wait just 10 more minutes. She slams the door shut. Bernard yells that he will wait 10 minutes and no more. Tara sighs in relief, and the woman laughing realizes what the hourglass was for. She sits back at the table. Andre says they should get straight to the point, questioning why she thinks the Elias house will fall. Tara explains that only one of the 3 princes will become king and that right after the coronation, the houses that supported the main losers will be lucky if they escape death. Andre finds the story fascinating but still doesn't understand what it has to do with becoming her apprentice. Tara points out that she needs the Black Society. Placing a blank check on the table, she explains that she needs a mentor who understands every aspect of the empire at the deepest level. Only she could help with that. Andre laughs, saying that even if she had the courage to show up there with a blank check, she doubts Tara could even pay her price no matter how much she wrote. With a determined look, Tara explains that maybe not now, but she will be able to pay in 3 years. Standing up, Andre states that there are no guarantees of that and that she is inclined to refuse. Tara asks if she doesn't have enough confidence to take her as an apprentice. Andre is surprised that she would appeal to her pride. Continuing, Tara explains that with her help as a mentor, she could become an official executive in 3 years, eventually becoming consul after that, ending up as the leader of the Elias house. She remembers that being the leader of a house destined for failure isn't exactly great, but she's the only one who knows that, finding it funny that the closer she gets to destruction, the closer she gets to that title. Andre puts her hand on her chin thoughtfully and then smiles. Tapping the table, she says the palace exams are in a month from now, saying she will decide based on whether Tara passes or not. Her performance will speak for her. Tara stays quiet, observing Andre, already returning to the castle. Bernard asks how the task went, the one her future depended on. Tara answers that she thinks she did well overall, correcting herself that actually, she thinks it worked out. She thinks it was strange that Andre promised to visit every night starting next week, although it's just a conditional promise, feeling that she's skating on ice that gets thinner and thinner. At the tavern, Andre is laughing while looking at papers on her table. She says that apparently she got herself a pretty chubby apprentice this time, also saying that this one is quite smart. Heading toward a rope, she wonders aloud what she needs to do to help her advance even faster. She pulls the rope and keeps thinking aloud, finding the possibility of the fall of the Elias house, and the young girl becoming the next leader interesting. The bartender from earlier appears, declaring she is at her service. Andre orders her to go down to the basement and look for anything related to the Elias house, and asks her to assign someone to keep an eye on her newest apprentice. She grabs the check she received from Tara and hands it to the bartender, asking her to check with her consultant about its authenticity. The woman bows and agrees. Meanwhile, turning her back, Andre thinks she's excited to see how Tara will handle things from now on. At the Elias house, Count Lloyd is talking to his butler. He was incredulous that Tara had gone to that tavern, asking what on earth she went there for. The butler responds that it was the information they received by letter, continuing to say they also received the name of the person Tara had chosen as her tutor. Lloyd asks if he thinks it could have something to do with the Black Society. The man says it might be the case, explaining that this group has two main divisions, intelligence and operations. But he doesn't know much more than that. He finally points out the name of Tara's new tutor, Andre Pitt. The Count puts his hand on his chin thoughtfully, wondering how she found Andre. Looking out the window, he sees Tara running with a platoon of soldiers, thinking aloud that all of Pitt's apprentices have been exceptional, so choosing Tara seemed strange. In the courtyard, she falls while running, shocking her father even more. The information doesn't seem to match. Tara was shouting, saying she couldn't go on anymore, and a soldier retorted, stating that barely half an hour had passed since they started. The Count said she must have been very lucky and that he would wait to see what happens. The butler said that an urgent message had arrived from the office. The Count sat down, saying he already knew what to expect. The butler handed over the letter and said it was about Tara. He opened the letter and began to read. Lloyd was shocked, wondering what it was he was seeing. Calling his butler, Dylan, he asked him to summon his legal advisor immediately. In her room, Tara commented that Beth was late. She heard hurried footsteps behind the door. Beth, out of breath, burst through the door. She said that Tara was right, and that a consultant had visited the house that morning, telling her that the maid said he spent a lot of time talking with the Count. Tara stated that her mentor was quite cunning, asking if her father had called her. Beth was surprised, pointing out that Mr. Dillon only sent her upstairs to call her to the lower hall. Tara said she realized that by how long Beth took. Beth said they were already waiting in the hall. Tara was surprised, thinking she would again have to face several other nobles. In the main hall, Jason was saying he had a good idea to restart the production of beverages and strengthen relations with neighboring countries. A man said that the bans on beverage production were made to reduce unnecessary costs for the empire and to calm the population after years of famine, war, and drought, and that it wouldn't be easy to make the crown repeal the law. Jason was embarrassed. Meanwhile, Tara was thinking about the import bans. Chloe said there was a rumor spreading, a very interesting piece of information that could only be obtained at a high price. She said she heard that a member of the crown had been assigned to a secret mission. She added that they should turn the holds of their merchant ships into wine cellars for transporting beverages on the next voyage. A man with long hair asked about the veracity of this information, because if it were false, they would have a lot to lose. Tara nodded. She froze in place, realizing this was different from the original story. In the book, the prohibition was only repealed after the end of a war, but that war hadn't even started yet. The Count asked Chloe where she heard this rumor, wondering if it was at the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of War. She replied that actually her mother was establishing relations with the Anton house, which had a duke inside the Ministry of Justice. The Count asked if her mother's ancestral house, the Philippe house, had helped her in the negotiation. Chloe answered that yes, her grandfather had helped her. Jason stood up, asking his father to let him take charge of all negotiations related to wine, arguing that he was the best person for the job and was already ready for distribution. The Count was thoughtful. Jason then asked for a chance. Meanwhile, Tara was frozen in place, trying to remember where she had heard the name Anton House. She remembered she had overheard it while eavesdropping on a conversation behind a door. She was in doubt about what would happen if the information from the ministry was false. The Count said it was fine for Jason to handle it, but questioned how he would deal with the damages it would cause to their house if the information wasn't true. Tara was relieved, realizing her father was thinking the same as she was, but she quickly realized it wasn't the time to be happy. Everything was happening much faster than in the book, and if it really continued like this, the destruction of her house would happen earlier than planned, before she could do anything to stop it. She was sweating cold. The Count stood up, pointing out that they would need to build an illegal distillery, create contracts with importers, and ensure a safe distribution network. He continued saying that all these preparations require time, money, and foundation. Looking down at everyone, he asked if it was really worth the risk based on the word of just one man. Jason stuttered, trying to explain to his father that the information was probably true. Lloyd slammed his fist on the table. The Count explained that while in an official meeting, he must refer to him as Your Excellency, and not as father. Jason agreed, frightened and powerless. The Count explained that entering the beverage business wasn't the problem here. The problem would be that if the information was false, the Elias house would be labeled as rebels. Rebels who would be against the king and his wishes. He asks who would want to do business with a house like that. He snaps his fingers, finally saying to check the information on the Anton and Philippe houses, and once all the details are on the table, they will resume the discussion. Everyone agrees. As they leave, the Count's children wonder why Tara is there with them, commenting that she didn't even say anything during such an important meeting. Chloe approaches her and asks if she has been acting like an idiot this whole time, wanting to know what she really wanted. Tara is surprised and hesitant says that obviously not, and that she spent all her time in her room doing absolutely nothing. Chloe replies that she doesn't care what Tara does or doesn't do, but she doesn't want her to stain the family's name. Tara says she understands and will be careful, calling her by name. Chloe gets irritated, asking why she didn't use her title. Tara explains that they're sisters, so she saw no problem in just calling her Chloe. Chloe says whatever, but that she'll keep her eyes open on her. Chloe leaves the meeting room. The butler tells Tara that the Count is calling her. She goes, head down and thoughtful, thinking he's going to comment about Andre Pitt and about what she was doing in the tavern. She grips her dress tightly. She thinks she needs all the support she can get from her father. Already seated in the room, she was very nervous. It was the first time she spoke alone with her father. The Count says he has 3 questions for her. She nervously agrees, mentally wondering why so many. Her father then tells her that they received a card from Andre, asking how she managed to convince her to be her tutor. Tara gulps and thinks she has 2 answers to that question. She starts by saying that not long ago there was an 8-year-old boy named Peter, and he started watching and following her training with Bernard using a wooden sword. The butler and the Count are left without reaction, trying to understand what that had to do with the conversation. She asks if they're listening and if she can continue. The Count says yes. She explains that she saw the boy arriving full of bruises, and that Peter started copying her training routine from a distance while watching. At first, he was just a boy of skin and bones to her. However, she discovered that he was actually being bullied by the other children. She thought he would quit after a few days at first, not giving him much credibility. But 2 days later, she found Bernard training him alone. The Count asks why that happened. She remembers asking Bernard why he was teaching the boy so easily while she had all the trouble convincing him and paying for it. Bernard said that the boy promised to become the best swordsman in the Empire and that he had no one else to ask, begging Bernard to train him. He continued, saying that it's not very likely his dream will come true, but it's much more fun teaching him than Tara, saying that he learns fast. That left her a bit irritated, but then he explained more, saying that he watched how the boy trained, and if he proved himself worthy, Bernard would continue to teach him. Otherwise, he would just kick him away. The Count slaps his legs laughing, saying that Andre is actually doing the same with Tara, testing her to see if she's worth the effort. He laughs, saying that this is very interesting and that it answers 2 of his questions. When he's about to ask his last question, he's interrupted by Dylan. The butler says they still haven't received the response from the consultant. The Count says he already has the answer he needs, sipping his tea calmly. The butler looks at Tara nervously. She says she will answer the question, saying she was sure that Andre wanted the blank check to be authorized by a jurist. The butler confirms that's exactly what she asked of them. Tara explains that Pitt accepted her as an apprentice for this reason, just like Bernard trains the boy, and that authenticating the check was just one of her tests, since she didn't have much faith that Tara would become a palace scribe anyway. The butler is shocked, understanding that Andre actually wanted to see how they would proceed if the check wasn't validated. The Count lowers his head and says that's exactly it, adding that this is a test for both Tara and the Elias house. He opens a drawer from the desk. Tara asks if he approved the check. The Count places the check on the table and questions if she really ventured into such a dangerous place without even knowing if the check would be authenticated. She says she didn't know if she had earned his trust enough for that. The Count laughs, saying he liked her attitude. He snaps his fingers and asks what she chooses, macarons or cookies. Tara, as a good person on a diet, chooses both, while the butler is still shocked to see the Count laughing so much. She feels happy seeing her father laugh and believing that she finally earned his approval. 5 minutes later, she realizes the damage she has done to herself when she sees both sweets on the table. While eating, she questions why he is being so nice to her, thinking that despite being quite cold at times, he is still her father. She chews and tries to calm down because there is still a long road ahead. The Count says he's curious, asking why she decided to take the palace exams. She thinks she has known the answer to that question since the moment she decided to participate, but she has to be careful with how she tells him. She places her hand on her chest and swallows the food. Tara realizes that because of the weight of her reasons, his response could ruin any good moment they are having as a family. She drinks a little milk while mentally preparing herself. Tapping the glass on the table, she says she was only able to endure the pain of the last 7 years because of her dear brother, Brandon. The room falls silent for a second. The Count gets a serious look, trying to process the information. He stands up, irritated, asking who she thinks she is to talk about Brandon with him. The butler tries to ask him to calm down, but it's too late. Tara knows she has to do this, even though it's hard. She needs to talk about the event from 7 years ago and trigger her father's trauma. 7 years ago, a young boy was in a flower-adorned coffin. Someone wondered why he was there, why that was his fate. Another person approached with trembling hands, saying that the boy had left a gift for the young girl. He opened the box, revealing a scroll inside, with a voice asking who it was for. The person responded that it was for Lady Tara, a young girl who was crying in the corner of the room. In the present, Tara thinks that the best way to overcome a trauma is to confront your most painful memories. The Count slams the table and asks if just because he gave her some sweets, she thinks she has the right to say that to his face. She grabs her dress, frightened, but she continues, saying that not a day goes by that she doesn't regret it, that she can't stop thinking about why she went after that damn treasure chest. She wishes it had never happened. Lloyd says that now it's too late for apologies. She asks him to finish listening to her. He stays still, staring at her. The butler says that he can't mourn the loss of his son forever. He sits down with his hand on his face. Tara asks what would happen if she completed her brother's life dream in his place. Lowering his hand, the Count asks what she means by that. She remembers Brandon's dream, him saying that he wanted to become a scribe or even the consul of the empire. She says she heard him talk about his dreams when they were children, affirming that she has wanted to fulfill his wish ever since that time, to carry his dreams and hopes. The Count then realizes that she reminds him of his lost son, seeing the same spark in her eyes that Brandon had. Someone knocks at the door. A maid enters, bringing more food. The Count says she must be hungry and tells her to eat before continuing. She thanks him, addressing him respectfully. He asks Tara to call him father. Tara does so with a small smile, thinking it's working. The Count asks what her opinion is about the earlier meeting. Placing the cookie back on the plate, she makes a thoughtful expression. The butler says he asked a very difficult question for the lady. She says that even if what Duke Anton said is true, it's too early to act if they want to hear her opinion. The Count tells her to continue. Tara then states that the current emperor seems to have a personal attachment to the prohibition, so even if it's repealed, they still wouldn't be sure about His Majesty's true feelings, and therefore they needed to be very cautious. Her father asks what she means. She states that they should wait for the current prohibitions to be lifted and then apply for a license to manufacture a type of wine exclusively for the palace. Already in her room, she says she needs some stomach medicine from Dr. Oliver while fanning herself with her hand, almost fainting. Beth says they have several herbs for that planted in the room, so she could take them whenever she wanted. Tara feels embarrassed for not knowing that. The maid then asks if it's really true, if the prohibition is really going to be revoked, saying that someone said they heard it during the meeting. Tara asks who she heard that from, finding it strange for her to be interested in that kind of thing. Realizing it could be true, Beth becomes extremely happy. Laughing, Tara asks what made her so happy, wanting to hear the good news. Meanwhile, Beth was hopping like a rabbit from so much joy. The maid says it's confidential information and that she only got her hands on it by coincidence. Tara becomes curious. Beth then whispers in her ear, asking if she had any money saved. Then she puts her hand over her mouth to signal not to speak aloud. Beth continues, saying she invested 3 months of her salary into it, which Tara concludes was 6 gold coins. With her head in the clouds, Beth says yes. She said they mentioned it was an investment that would return 20 times the value. Tara watched the scene without fully understanding, until she realized, hurriedly asking if she had invested in Sorbonian wine. Beth says she knew Tara would figure it out. Tara asks how she found out about it. Beth replies that Cindy, one of the house's butlers who was her friend, said that his older brother heard it from a noble, basically a medieval game of telephone. Tara suddenly stands up, asking when Beth handed over her money to them. She replies that it was 2 days ago. Tara grabs her by the shoulders and tells her to run and get back her 3 months' wages. She continues, murmuring that first they needed to find Cindy, also wondering if the account they used for the transaction even existed. Frightened, Beth asks what's wrong. Tara warns that they are convincing people to give their money just to run away afterward, that it was a big scam, and tells her to go after Cindy immediately. Beth runs out of the room and Tara sits down. She realizes her mother may have fallen for the same trick. Now both of them are walking down the hallway. The maid looks downcast while Tara thinks that she ended up gaining weight from stress eating the night before. Tara remembers her mother's naivety, possibly having invested just because everyone else was doing it, wondering why her mother had to be part of all this. They arrive at a hall filled with various nobles. She asks if there's an event happening today. Beth replies that she's not sure, but there are many important lords and ladies present. Tara thinks there's nothing she can do. She stops and realizes she might be forgetting something, giving herself a slap on the cheek right afterward. Beth, shocked, asks what happened. Tara turns, asking if she had any copy of the day's news. Beth responds that she left it in her room earlier. Tara says she ended up not reading it, having left the room without even glancing at the papers. Arriving back at the room, she sees the news. It turns out the rumor that the beverage prohibition would be lifted was false, and Duke Anton was responsible for much of the deceit, dragging many nobles with him. The news also covered crimes related to the Lacton gang and the possible implications of this scandal on the palace exam that would happen in 3 weeks. Tara then says that this is absolute chaos, going back down the stairs to the hall. Tara comes across a large formal delegation of knights investigating on behalf of the palace. At their center was a well-dressed young man with brown hair whom she found quite handsome and strangely familiar. He looks at her sideways with a serious gaze. Covering her mouth so as not to say anything, she realizes that the young man was the beggar she helped the other day. In the Count's meeting room, someone was asking what they should do and that they needed a plan. Another noble complains, stating that no one could have imagined things would spiral out of control like this. The Count replied that the legal advisor would arrive soon and that they should resolve the legal matters once he arrived. Someone knocks hurriedly at the door. A butler opens it and shouts that they have an emergency. Approaching, he says that His Highness, Prince Kyle, has arrived. The Count is in shock, asking what that brat is doing here. He tries to process everything. He knew there would be an investigation sooner or later, but he didn't understand why the prince himself would show up. The butler asks how he should proceed. Someone informs that they are waiting for his orders to act. Lloyd asks him that when the consultant arrives, to tell him to come to the main building immediately, and asks him not to speak to anyone until he calls for him. Everyone agrees. The butler reinforces that they need to do something about the prince. The Count puts his hand on his face and asks for a moment to think of something. Standing up, he asks them to bring his best outfit and to escort the prince to the entrance hall and inform him that he will arrive shortly. The butler agrees and leaves. He tells someone named Harrison to go to the servants' quarters and summon whoever is present. Then he asks Nate to remove all the soldiers from the entrance, as the prince might misunderstand their intentions. Leaving in a hurry, he asks the rest of the men present to follow him. They hesitate to go. The Count says that if they are afraid the prince will raise his sword against them and don't go, they will look even more suspicious, as if they are guilty of something. Trying to encourage them, he says that even if together they can't surpass the prince in hierarchy, at least they can intimidate him with numbers. In the main hall, the prince was sitting on a throne at the center while the Count bowed, demonstrating respect. Prince Kyle says that it has been about 2 years since they last saw each other. In his mind, the Count says that the boy hasn't changed at all during that time, wearing the same expression he had when he left them stranded in the same place for a month in the past, thinking about how arrogant the boy was. Then he responds that indeed it has been 2 years, that the last time they met was at the Empire's border. Putting his hand on his chin, the prince agrees, stating that the plains of Pantheon are an endless headache, always seeming like a place of smuggling and endless conflicts. He finishes by asking if the Count managed to take care of the rats in that region. Irritated but maintaining composure, the Count replies that yes, and that he will never forget the grace His Highness granted him on that occasion. The prince states that he was afraid his visit would be too late, and that he finally managed to respond to his invitation, finishing by taking a sip of his tea. The Count is confused, asking what invitation the prince is referring to, apologizing for not being sure what he is talking about. The nobles around them also whispered in confusion, wondering if there was any event that would justify inviting the prince. Laughing, the young man says he didn't realize the Count was serious, saying that he probably doesn't remember their conversation 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the prince and the Count from the Elias family were talking about the frequent smuggling in the region, Lloyd affirming that they were not involved in any illegal schemes. Kyle says they received a notification to investigate the area and would appreciate their cooperation. The Count responded by pointing out that the Elias house made no prohibited trades by the Empire, and that it must have been false news. They spent an entire month on the Empire's border searching, and to the nobles' disbelief, they found some luxury items in their luggage. Turning to the Count, the prince recites a popular saying, explaining that it's said you can judge a man's character by looking at the person he works for. Meanwhile, a servant removes a fancy fabric from a chest. The prince continues by saying that standing here now, the house doesn't seem to have the reputation it deserves as one of the most powerful families in the Empire. The Count is extremely embarrassed. After all, they had found a little bit of fabric that hadn't been reported, cursing internally. Nervously, he thanks them for helping to find the rats who did this, and says they will fix it to show their gratitude for His Highness's mercy. The prince then asks if he doesn't know that bribery is also an illegal practice. The Count, already sweating, says it was just an expression of his gratitude, and that he would like to invite the prince to his house, not to bribe him. The young man asks if he means a dinner and asks if he is really inviting him to his house. The Count says that's exactly it and that it would be a great honor. The prince then laughs, asking how many men his horse has, saying he will do that when he has the opportunity. He continues by telling Count Elias to be a little more vigilant with his merchandise. Back to the present, the Count says that since they hadn't exchanged words for a long time, he wasn't prepared for his arrival. The prince says that's nonsense and that he didn't send any letter because it would put him under a lot of pressure, and it would seem like he was coming as a royal official, as a prince, and not as a friend. Lloyd says the prince speaks well, and that a casual and friendly visit would be welcomed, ending by inviting him to dinner. Nobles were whispering in the background. not understanding what was happening. The prince continues, saying that it would be disrespectful to leave so soon after being invited to such a respected house, and that's why he cleared his schedule for the next 2 days. The count is shocked, internally thinking about how he's going to deal with the prince staying in his house for 2 days, trying to understand what that little snake might be plotting. Meanwhile, in the meeting room, the legal advisor talks to Victoria, telling her that she must give all the details, but above all, never admit that she knew the wines were smuggled. She asks if she will get her money back somehow. The butler politely asks her not to worry about money right now, and that her main task was to make it seem like she was deceived. Victoria becomes extremely irritated. Slapping her thighs, she asks how she couldn't worry. After all, she had spent a lot of time saving for this, investing a total of 3,000 gold coins. Still trembling, she tries to grab her drink. The butler thinks that a single wrong word could send her to the dungeon to be tortured, finding it strange how she seemed so troubled only about things like money. To him, Victoria seems like a lost cause, especially when the ruthless Prince Kyle is currently sitting in their house. In the library, Tara asks Beth what's happening, shocked that the prince will be staying at their house for the next 2 days. Beth then says that he's currently in his quarters and says she's very relieved about that. Tara asks why she's relieved. She explains that she thought the prince was there to catch her, the countess and the others involved, but the prince said he only came as a friendly guest. Oh, how easily deceived she is. Beth keeps thinking out loud that maybe she can still recover the money she invested. Tara says her only wish is that he only arrests the countess and no one else. She remembers the moment she laid eyes on him, realizing then that he wasn't just an ordinary man. Beth asks what she means because she didn't understand. Putting her hand on her face and thoughtful, Tara tries to remember what happened next in the original book. Beth, excited, asks what chronicles she's referring to. Tara asks her to forget it and says she was just talking to herself, then starts writing on a paper on the table. The maid, a little annoyed, thinks about how she can talk to herself while someone else is still in the room, feeling like she had forgotten Beth was even there. While writing down information about Prince Kyle and his importance in the kingdom, she questions why she can't remember what happens next, then asks Beth to fetch more papers. Tara finds it strange that Beth hasn't responded yet and calls for her. The maid then says that her lady said she was talking to herself and not to her. Tara turns, seeing Beth pouting irritably. Trying to calm her down, Tara says she'll get her 6 gold coins. Beth, arms crossed and sighing, says it's fine after all. It would end up coming out of her pocket anyway, and that she's not shameless enough to ask her for money. Tara responds that she's not going to use her money but will get Beth's money back. Surprised, Beth asks if Tara could really do that. Tara says yes and asks her to find out where Prince Kyle's quarters are, asking Beth to make sure she asks someone trustworthy. Cheerful, Beth says she will definitely do that and would do anything for the lady who promised to return her 3 months' salary, asking her to trust her. Tara remembers that in the book, the nobles investigated for challenging imperial authority were imprisoned. She realizes that things are happening much faster than planned, because this case was supposed to occur around chapter 30, but according to her calculations, they were only close to chapter 4, and things were escalating too much. She drinks a glass of water to calm down. She recalls what happened a few days ago, still not understanding how someone as important and powerful as the prince was rolling around in the filth of Lacton's Road. In another room, Jason and Chloe were talking. He was inconsolable, asking where their mother got so much money. Chloe responds that it's not important. What matters now is that the prince has just visited them. Jason calls the prince a bastard, saying he had the nerve to come to their house without a royal invitation. Chloe then glares at the maids, who get scared. She tells him to be careful and reminds him that the walls have ears. Understanding the warning, the maids leave the room. She continues, explaining that, in the future, if he becomes a scribe, he might end up working for Prince Kyle. Irritated, Jason tells her not to be ridiculous, questioning how he could work for someone who's not first in line to the throne. Sipping her tea, she asks him to lower his voice and explains that it's a fact that Prince Kyle now has a lot of power in his hands. He retorts, saying that it doesn't make sense. Elsewhere, Arya says she's never seen anyone as attractive as the prince and that all the rumors about him were false, as he didn't seem threatening at all. Quite the opposite. He seemed so gentle to her. The maid was making her bed while Arya wondered what she should wear to the banquet tonight. Opening the wardrobe, she continues thinking aloud, saying that those eyes and that face were everything she had dreamed of her whole life, and that her heart couldn't stop racing. Staring at her dresses, she says none of them would do, and that she needed to visit Chloe's seamstress. She then asks the maid to go to the seamstress and reserve the pink dress for her. The woman rushes over, explaining that the dress was tailor-made for Miss Chloe, and that she would be furious if she found out. Arya, like any spoiled girl, seems not to hear what she said, wondering aloud what jewelry she should wear to match the dress. Meanwhile, Tara was in the library with several sheets of paper spread across the table. The clock showed 2:30. She was reading a letter written 5 years ago, which said that a little-known prince had recently been added to the line of succession, and the news questioned whether he would be a stain or a hope for the empire. Another piece, from 3 years ago, stated that the people welcomed the appointment of Prince Kyle as the new Minister of Security since he had uncovered a spy and restored the ministry's reputation after a corruption scandal. The next, from a year ago, reported that several nobles were furious about Prince Kyle's appointment as the new commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He had earned this position after his significant contribution to the victory in the war 3 years earlier. The last article she read was from a newspaper called Palace News, stating that the wine smugglers had been arrested, but the financiers were still at large. It also added that the prohibition law would hardly be lifted and asked at the end what would be the name of the anonymous hero who revealed this scheme to the royal house. Tara was surprised, realizing that the prince had occupied 2 important positions at just 27 years old, and connecting the dots, she understood that the prince himself was the anonymous hero who exposed the wine scheme. She then says she can't believe no one had figured it out. In her mind, she believes the author really wrote this as a message from God, helping her understand the situation. Finally, she questions how she can fight someone of this level to save her family, taking another glass of water to calm herself. After all that, irritated, she comments that she had lost her appetite. Someone knocks on the door. The person then opens the door and says that Mr. Andre Pitt has arrived. The Count, with his hand on his face and worried, says he had forgotten that he was coming and asks for him to be taken to the room. Walking in with several luxurious clothes, Andre enters the room. The Count forces a cough and signals for the servants to leave them alone. He stands up as the butlers leave and greets Andre, saying it's a pleasure to finally meet him. Holding his hand, Andre says he had the pleasure of observing him a bit from afar. Awkwardly, the Count says it's an honor and that he would never have imagined someone with his reputation would accept becoming Tara's mentor. She then says that his daughter is quite interesting and that she appreciated the fact that they approved her conditions and authenticated the check. Laughing, the Count says that's the least he could do to repay him for his cooperation. Andre says he heard that Prince Kyle was visiting the Elias house, then takes a sip from his cup. Lloyd says that words travel very fast inside the Black Society, and that this will probably give him a nice headache. Andre then says that now that she is well acquainted with the Elias house, she will offer them a gift. He asks what kind of gift she means. She says it's nothing particularly big, but might help ease things a little. The Count is left confused. She explains, pointing out that a man named Garrig Anton is dead. The Count is shocked. Smiling, she asks if he would mind if she observed the Elias house for a while. As she walks out the door, Lloyd, still in shock, tries to process the information that now that the man is dead, it means there are no other witnesses. In some room, someone tells a lady that he is here. It turns out Beth had brought the butler responsible for Prince Kyle's quarters. 5 minutes later, finishing the conversation, she hands something to the butler. She asks him to do exactly what he was told, and he says he understands, putting what she gave him in his pocket. She goes to the back of the room and also hands him this, giving him a gold coin. Without understanding, the butler asks what it's for. Tara says it's just compensation and asks if it's not enough. He seems unable to process it and says he's just doing his job. Betty explains to him to simply take the coin, also mentioning that her lady has her quirks. Tara asks if that's supposed to be a compliment, and laughing, Betty responds that of course it is. Though the butler still looks very confused with the coin in hand, Tara simply tells him to keep it, saying he'll probably need to help her again soon. Blushing, he replies that he should be compensated after completing his task. A bit irritated, she realizes he's one of those very persistent types and grips the coin tightly. She asks Beth if she saw him blushing, thinking that maybe he had been a little mesmerized by her charm. The maid then gives her a completely blank and pitiful look. Tara yells at her and tells her not to look at her like that, saying that beneath all the fat, she was very beautiful, and Beth knew it. Beth ignores her and explains that Niels, the butler, was probably just surprised like she was. Tara doesn't understand. Beth elaborates that despite them being her servants, she treats them as equals, and sometimes it seems like she came from a different world. She then freezes and nervously laughs, saying she'll accept that as a compliment too. Trying to disguise it and whistling, she says she's always been like this, just didn't show it to others. Betty gets curious if she can ask what was in the pouch Tara gave Niels and how that would help recover her money. She says it will help show the way to get her money back and that it's probably better if she doesn't know the pouch's contents. Tara starts to say they should head to the hall but stops midway, leaving Beth confused. She grabs a cookie and, smiling, says she'll just have one more cookie. In the meeting room with her siblings and Andre, Tara thinks about how hard it was to convince Andre to be her mentor, only to see that everyone else would get it so easily. It seemed unfair to her. She was pouting and Andre noticed, smiling. Andre says they have only 3 weeks until the palace exams and that they will receive a schedule with a task every week, and the one with the highest scores will be rewarded with preparation materials for the exam. She continues, saying that the first lesson starts now, opening the floor to any questions they might have. Pouting, Tara thinks she must find all this very amusing, but decides she'll play along with her little game. Jason stands up and bows, saying it's an honor to be before the Count, but then corrects himself, calling her Master Pitt, saying he will use the utmost respect to address her. She looks at him mockingly, saying that all she expects is for him to fulfill what she assigned. Awkwardly, he agrees, realizing his flattery didn't help at all. Arya raises her hand, saying that with all due respect, they already had previous exams. Pitt, irritated, explains that she cannot compare the trash they have with the material gathered by the Black Society. She points out that the material they possess was compiled by retired administrative officials who had extensive experience serving the Great Emperor, continuing to say that they worked for 100 days and 100 nights to compile this material, affirming that studying these writings for 3 days guarantees direct passage in the first screening. She said that even someone very stupid could pass if they use this material for a week. Completely irritated, she shouts that it is by far the best preparation material in the entire empire. After getting so emotional, she becomes breathless and continues waving her arms. Everyone is moved. She says she only shared this material with one person in the last 5 years. Chloe asks who that person is. Andre responds that it was the first scribe of the emperor, Viscount Alan Godfrey. She asks if anyone else has any questions. Tara's siblings whisper among themselves in disbelief. Only Jason remains silent after his last embarrassment. Meanwhile, Tara realizes how incredible this is since, from what she remembers, this man was the most trusted person by the Emperor. Jason asks if she will give it to only one of them. Andre explains that whoever manages to complete the tasks she assigns will receive it. Chloe asks what this week's task is. Pitt laughs, saying it's simple, that they just have to find out the purpose of the Emperor's visit. Everyone is extremely shocked. Tara looks at her father and realizes she knows that look. He wants her to succeed. Pitt explains that if you are going to serve the Empire, you must first understand the motivation of the one on the throne and asks if the Count agrees. He affirms that he does. Blushing, Arya asks how much time they have. Tara wonders why she has such an excited and flushed face. Andre says they will have until tomorrow, since that's when the prince will leave and his intentions will be revealed. Tara gets anxious, realizing that the Countess and her mother might be arrested at that moment, and wonders how much time is left until the prince leaves. She asks if the deadline is tomorrow and not today, seeming a bit ADHD. Andre confirms and states that the time starts now. She asks if there is any limit they cannot cross. Andre explains that she wouldn't go as far as to go against the prince unless they want to be accused of treason. The word treason weighs on everyone's mind in the room. Tara then realizes that they could end up on the wrong side of the prince, or even be accused of crimes if they cross the line. Regret starts to run through each of them, realizing that how they handle this fear will determine who will excel and who will destroy themselves. 5 minutes later, Count Lloyd asks if she thinks his children will succeed. She responds that it's ideal, but as she was about to answer what would happen if they failed, the Count interrupts asking what would happen. She continues, explaining that this is an opportunity to eliminate those who are not fit, then questioning if he is worried. He asks about what. She says that any false move and his children could end up in big trouble. The Count points out that there will be greater trials they must pass for the exam, saying that if they were accused of treason or something like that, it would reveal a lot about their potential. Adjusting his mustache, he explains that weeds need to be pulled from the garden. Pitt laughs, saying that's exactly what she expected from him and says she looks forward to tomorrow. They part ways with a handshake. In the prince's quarters, someone says that there was a meeting between Andre Pitt and the Count, adding that they heard rumors about her being the next mentor of the Elias house children. The prince seems intrigued, saying it's interesting for a canary to disguise as a mentor, and asks about the girl. The soldier explains that her name is Tara Elias, and she is the 5th daughter of the house, giving the context that she spent 7 years confined in her room and only recently appeared in public. The prince asks if there is anything else. The man says that she invited the prince to dinner at 7 and asked if His Highness needed anything before then. He was reading a news article from the Ministry of Security stating the autopsy of the Anton family member who was suspected of having committed suicide in prison. He sighs, saying they are hinting that they already know the reason for his presence. Prince Kyle bangs the table and asks the soldier to gather information on anything related to the Elias house and says they will resume once new information is collected at night. The guard agrees. Someone knocks on the door. Another soldier then tells the prince that Jason Elias is requesting an audience with him. He says that the Elias family has probably already finished their little conspiracy meeting, wondering what Andre has up her sleeve now, finally telling the guard to ask Jason to wait. The sound of the clock flooded the room. One of the soldiers guarding the door was nervous. informing the prince that they had been making Jason wait for more than half an hour. The prince then asks Nick who he is. Nick quickly responds that he is the most prominent prince of the Empire of Okarion, with a great number of victories under his belt and the one who rooted out all the traitors infiltrated in the Empire's security. The prince asks what else. The soldier responds that he is also a great swordsman. Kyle repeats his question. Nick starts rambling, saying that he holds the two main positions dedicated to the guard and security of the Empire. The prince mimics a parrot and repeats the question again. Already stunned and nervous, Nick wonders what exactly the prince wants as an answer. He then remembers an article from a newspaper called Imperial Daily. Nick says that according to the newspaper, he was classified as the ideal son-in-law, without mentioning the most feared man on the battlefield. And according to the magazine Nobles Weekly, he was ranked #1 on the list of people they would most like to see buried alive. Realizing he had said something wrong, Nick begs him to forget that last part. Extremely irritated, the prince asks if he wished for his death. The young soldier kneels, saying it was just a slip and begging His Highness to spare his life. In another room, Jason was trembling with irritation, calling the prince an arrogant bastard. Standing up, he curses the task given by Andre to Hel, thinking it's better to just steal her material. He storms down the hallway. A butler behind a pillar watches him pass. 30 minutes have passed. The prince was reading a paper while saying that the Black Society would never release information that could potentially harm the palace, but this fool wants to play with him. Nick stands up asking what kind of idiot would want to mess with the prince, saying he would find the fool immediately and break him into pieces. Kyle sighs. He explains that Pitt is using the Elias family to try to find out things about Anton's death. He continues, saying he heard that the Elias family had beautiful steeds, suggesting they should take a look. At dusk, many clashing sounds could be heard, the sound of metal hitting metal. The prince and a soldier were dueling. Another soldier watched, impressed. The butler approaches, apologizing for the interruption. The soldier who was watching asks what brings him there. The man then pulls a letter from his pocket, informing that Lady Arya had asked him to deliver this correspondence to His Highness. He says it's not usual for him to fulfill such requests. The butler then pleads, shaking the letter in front of him, saying that his lady would not look kindly on him if he didn't fulfill her request. With a very sad expression, he insists it's not a bribe, and peacefully asks him to accept it. Reluctantly, the soldier accepts but warns that he will check the contents first. Opening the letter, he is surprised and asks what the hell that thing was. 30 minutes later, the duel was over, and Prince Kyle emerged sweaty. He then asks what that horrible thing was, feeling sorry for the girl. The soldier explains that it was a letter written by Arya to the prince, and he reports that he inspected the contents, and there was nothing threatening. The prince asks him to open the envelope. It turned out the letter was actually a huge poem where Arya romantically declared her love to Kyle. The prince then looks at the letter with disgust and orders the soldier to throw it away. Already in his quarters, the prince massages his neck. Someone knocks on the door. A soldier opens it, and the prince asks what it is this time, if it's the second daughter or the one with the axe. He replies it's the one with the axe. The prince tells him to ask her to wait. The soldier apologizes but says the girl is not there for an audience with His Highness, but rather to recover something of value to her. He asks where she wants to retrieve it from, and the guard replies that it's in the office. The prince laughs. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Beth explains that Jason waited all night since the prince apparently didn't want to meet with him, and that Lady Arya's letter was simply discarded immediately. Only Chloe hadn't made her move yet. Tara remembers her encounter with the prince and says that his curiosity would get the better of him in this situation, so he would want to meet her. A guard opens the door and informs Tara that the prince will give her 15 minutes and that she may enter. Approaching the room, she sees the door open and the prince seated in an armchair. She swallows hard, still standing at the entrance, and the prince asks if she's challenging him to a staring contest. She then pulls her dress and makes a noble salute, introducing herself. The young man says he doesn't remember asking for that. She thanks him for allowing her to retrieve her valuable object, but he retorts, saying she basically forced her way in with her excuse and that she now has only 12 minutes left. Extremely irritated, she says she'll start searching. He tells her to do as she wishes. Swallowing hard, she thinks she must control herself but would love to get her hands on those documents. She can feel his eyes boring holes into her back from how intensely he's staring. Tara lifts a plant arrangement and desperately says, "Look, it's not here," mentally telling herself not to laugh because she looks like an idiot who can't even disguise it. The prince says she now has only 10 minutes. Bending down under the table, she curses her own body. Already panting, she says it's not there either, and he replies, 9 minutes. She takes a deep breath and states that it's probably on his chair. Then she asks if he would mind standing up. The young man questions what would happen if he said yes. She mentally rejoices, finally managing to spark a bit of his interest. Tara apologizes, pointing out that she will need the object tonight. He says she is quite— Tara tenses, not understanding what he meant by that. The prince continues, adding that she is quite rude. She asks His Highness to forgive her, but says she realized that the object she forgot is important for tonight's ball, hence its urgency. Kyle states that she is very persistent and asks what she will do if it's not on the chair. She points out that her memory is very good and she's practically certain it's there. He says she overestimates herself. Tara concludes that if he gives her some time, she'll prove she's telling the truth. And if she's wrong, she's prepared to face the consequences anyway, but interested? He asks. But what? She says that, however, if what she's looking for is indeed on that chair, she asks that His Highness answer one question for her. Thoughtful, Tara believes that any commoner would have stepped aside and let her search. A noble would have called a servant to look, and a tyrant would have lost his patience. Despite all that, the prince there was smarter than that. He liked to control the situation using his mind. So, despite her true intentions, he has no choice but to give in to curiosity and accept her offer. The young man then jokes, saying that the consequences she speaks of would actually be considered treason, noting that's a pretty heavy burden on a table. The prince then hears her say that she's telling the truth and therefore his threats of treason fall on deaf ears. The prince says that when she offered him only one gold coin in the past, he understood it as confidence, but now she was simply appearing reckless. He then questions why he should answer her question. After all, it would just be a waste of his time. Tara doesn't understand why he's making it so difficult. She then simply asks him to be kind and let her finally retrieve what belongs to her. The prince says she's not qualified, that someone who gives up so easily isn't fit to pass the interview tests held by the imperial family. Tara is shocked, realizing what he's doing, thinking that maybe a more direct approach would work better. She says that looking for her belonging was just an excuse, managing to get his attention. She then begs that if she finds the item on that chair, he will answer her question, finally asking if His Majesty wasn't curious about what she would ask. Putting down the paper he was reading on the table, he stands up and asks what happens if he's not in the mood. She hesitates. Tara says she has many expectations about His Highness and that he is probably already well aware of the purpose of his visit. Kyle then asks what she would do next. She states that her question is not the one His Highness thinks she would ask. He looks surprised, saying she has the audacity to think she can read his mind. Nervous, and with her hand on her chest, she realizes she may have touched a sensitive spot, and that if this doesn't work, she won't have any other options. Moving toward her, the prince says that if Tara thinks she knows what his question would be, then he wants to hear her say it. Thinking carefully, she tells herself she can't let him beat her. He's only 27 years old. She motivates herself and almost lets her real name slip mentally, but quickly reminds herself she's in the role of Tara Elias. She says he probably thinks she would ask about the purpose of his visit to House Elias, but she claims she doesn't need to ask because she already knows. Crossing his arms, he says that arrogance is never good for anything, warning her that she only has 3 minutes left and should get to the point. She bows, apologizing for her audacity, but says that initially, she thought he was here to spy on House Elias. He asks why that is. Tara points out that it's a well-known fact that there was a rumor about the lifting of the alcohol prohibition, which quickly raised the value of smuggled wine in a short period of time. And the people who spread these rumors quickly threw in a large amount of money at the beginning to attract as many investors as possible. She explains that this action attracted a group of small investors, allowing them to pocket a large sum in a short period. The prince looked at her with a bored expression, arms crossed. She says that with his experience as Minister of Security, he suspected the countess since she invested an absurd amount of money, and thus to confirm his suspicions, he came to their house. Or so she thought. He asks if that's all, saying he's not a very patient man and her time is up. She hesitates a little. Tara then says that she only thought that at first, arguing that he wasn't here to spy on House Elias, but to use them as bait. Turning, he asks bait for whom. She says it's to catch those behind all of this. The prince pulls the door open and waits for her to leave, saying she's proven to be a great waste of time, and that her time is over. Shocked, she asks if anything she said was inaccurate, saying she still wanted to ask her question. Kyle, looking uninterested, says he doesn't remember agreeing to answer her question, explaining that he can see the arrogance living inside her. Tara whispers something. He repeats, not understanding. She then honestly begs, kneeling, asking him to clarify where she was wrong and where he believed she was being unduly arrogant. He asks why he needs to do that, repeating that her time was up. Blushing, she realizes she's practically on fire and needs to know when to quit. She then lifts her head and asks him if it's not his duty as the next in line to the throne to correct his subjects when they stray, and asks if he doesn't have pity on this foolish little ignorant girl. Laughing, he asks if she is prepared for the consequences she mentioned. She says she is prepared for any consequence she might face, calling him Your Highness at the end. He closes the door and asks what word he repeated the most this entire time. She doesn't understand at first, but he asks if he should set a time limit. Surprised? She says no. The prince sits back down in his chair. Tara, panting, says that what he repeated the most was, "Your time is up." Approaching her, he looks impressed and asks if that's the best her little brain could come up with. She then tries again, asking if it was him telling her to leave. Meanwhile, she's stunned, thinking he shouldn't be leaning toward her like that, with that appearance and being so close. Tara couldn't think straight. Already sweating, she wonders what the hell is going on. And since he wasn't speaking much, she couldn't think of any word. Squeezing her eyes shut, she tries to recall as much of their conversation as possible. She then reaches a conclusion and says it was arrogance. The prince turns to her and says she's not completely stupid. Although she got it right, she responds that she still doesn't understand. He explains that some people trust too much, whether in what they consider familiar, in their possessions, their knowledge, or even their family. He continues, calling her the axe girl, explaining that she made 3 mistakes. She then becomes frightened. The prince points out that it was arrogance behind her knowledge, arrogance because of her family, and arrogance surrounding her relationship with her servants. Elsewhere, the butler Niels was arranging some packages. Someone asks him if he is the main servant of the guest room, and he responds yes, asking if there was any problem. A voice then yells for them to grab him. Meanwhile, in another room, Tara's mother is sitting near a maid. The maid whispers something in her ear and scares her. Isabel then asks if she is sure about it, if she and the countess were really invited to the ball, back in the prince's quarters. He questions how it was arrogance on her part to blindly assume that her house wasn't behind this act of treason all along. Frightened, she realizes something. He was right. On what basis had she believed that her house wasn't involved with smuggling all this time? She had never even considered it. He continues, saying that talk about espionage or bait was just a mere little game. Trembling, she doesn't understand, asking what that meant. Kyle tells her to use her little head to think, unfortunately pointing out that she had made a grave mistake by using all means available to solve the problem without thinking about the proper consequences. Tara says she still doesn't understand. He questions why he had let her in, asking if she really thought he was curious about her little act of having lost something valuable or intrigued by what that object could be and its worth. He finishes by asking if she thinks it was by chance or because of that little encounter on the Lacton Road. Sweating and feeling chills, she can only think that he's bombarding her with questions and she can't think straight. Tara focuses for a second, asking about the servants. He says that apparently she isn't completely stupid after all, and that he despises those who are incapable of thinking more than one step ahead, pointing out that hordes of subjects lose their lives because of stupid and unprepared nobles like her. Pointing at her, he finally asks if she knows what he detests the most about her. Tara feels her heart pounding. He says that what he hates most are those who act hastily using the little knowledge they have and don't take responsibility for their actions. Then, showing a sack, he asks if she really thought he wouldn't notice that she ordered a servant to hide something in his quarters, saying that her arrogance is what he despises the most. She then falters, remembering her conversation with Niels. She puts her hand on her chest and says that it is her fault. Kyle throws the sack on the floor and asks if she could really endure the consequences she mentioned before. He says that he gave her a chance, but she threw it away. Someone knocks on the door and calls for His Highness. She collapses to the ground, powerless. Then the prince orders them to bring him in. And that is it for today, guys. Hope you liked the story, and if you want more of this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any new videos that I post. See you next time. Kisses!